Hello and welcome to John and James Live. My name's John Hastings.
And my name is James Seelow.
And this is John and James Live. What's going on? It's Monday.
It's definitely Monday.
And we've both got creased shirts on.
Should have paid more attention, mate. I did iron my wife's uniform at the weekend. I just neglected to iron my own shirt. How good a husband am I?
That's pretty good, James. I got this hobo look going on. This is quite in at the moment in London, isn't it?
What sort of is it?
It's like posh homeless,
disheveled chic.
Exactly.
I've just made it up on the fly. There you go.
Effortlessly.
Is it was that a fashion statement on your part, or is this just you?
It's just what I do, James. I'm setting trends.
Mate, if you've got to force it, it's not right, is it? It's got to just be natural.
It's got to flow. It has to flow. So, James, today we're going to talk about. We'll touch on a post that went a little bit viral, didn't it? So we're going to talk about that on Wednesday, which was I can't even remember what it was, James. What was the post? What was it about?
It's about our children being on devices all the time and how the algorithm is corrupting their minds.
There we go. Yeah. Tech,
grabbing their attention.
And the whole mobile phone thing. We take it for granted, didn't we? How much it's changed life in the last... I looked at it. It's only 2007 the first iPhone came out, which just blew my mind. Even social media, it's all very new, isn't it? I checked
the fact we call them smartphones.
Yeah.
The first smartphone.
I'd be interested to know what your screen usage is, Mr. Seelow.
Yeah.
Or is it too private?
It's not private at all.
I don't want to know your history.
Browsing history. I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
What should we look it up now?
Browsing history and
I reckon my screen usage is probably, it's got to be over 10 hours a day. Okay,
I've got to find it now, mate. We hadn't planned for this, had we?
No, it was a little bit. And we're like Luddites.
Screen time.
Screen time.
Screen time. Wow. Screen time. Okay, so I'm up.
Where did you get this, James?
So if you go into your settings,
yeah,
this is an education right now.
I've got it.
So go into your settings. Yeah. All right. Funnily enough, it says screen time, which is very ambiguous. And then I'm up 82% from last week. 3 hours, 49 minutes. And the majority of that spent on LinkedIn.
Say your last week's average screen time.
Where do I find that? Here we go.
So it says like screen time averages. So this week it won't say anything, but if you go to screen time average, then see what it is.
Well, it's definitely more LinkedIn.
Yeah. Mine is ridiculous.
I can imagine yours is. So yeah, mine on LinkedIn was 1 hour and 30 minutes.
And what's your overall last week's average?
So daily average 3 hours 49.
What, 3 hours 49? The whole thing?
On a daily basis. Average day.
All of the apps, everything. WhatsApp, YouTube.
I seem to be pretty good.
Mine's 16 hours.
Wow. Okay.
Check that out. 15 hours, 47 minutes. LinkedIn, I was on 35 hours.
Might not be in reverse, but there you go.
Now we know who's working hard.
Now we know who's doing the work. Who's doing all the work.
What the hell are you doing? Sitting, meditating in a bush somewhere?
Literally no idea.
I'm constantly working.
16 hours, that's for sure. Wow. I'm busy living. Seemingly.
Mate, I'm living in the virtual world, James. Constantly working online.
Therein lies the difference between you. That's 10 years difference right there. But that's a conversation to have on Wednesday.
Conversation Wednesday. So that was the thing is, I haven't looked at that for this year probably. So you completely can be unaware of those type of things. But I know when water comes over, it's completely
it's surprising, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, she's on it all the time, to be fair. So here we go. You ready? We're going to go for Donald Trump, because you've had a few conversations. We won't say with you, but, you know, friends, family members recently. Anything that we put up online to do with Donald Trump, he's like the man of the moment, isn't he? He's really making some moves in the US, which is having a global impact. But I'm more interested in the way people, you know, analyze data and become very emotionally attached to. I don't know what it is. Is it a belief system, or is politics become like a personality contest now, James? What would you say? Is it a bit of both? Is it founded in terms of the?
I think it's so we interact with people. I think if we go back to the basics, we interact with people based on how we look at them, what they represent, what they look like, whether they dress well, and we'll go into the kind of whole Zelensky thing. You make a decision about somebody supposedly in like 2 to 3 seconds. So if you look at a politician, you decide in your soul that you don't like them, or you don't like how they look or how they sound or anything about them. It's very difficult to kind of maybe change that round.
Yeah.
Immaterial of what they say, sometimes what they stand for. If you've taken an instant dislike, or that makes you feel uneasy about them, it's quite difficult to change that, isn't it? I think probably you'd agree. Would you agree or disagree?
I can see why people feel like that, but just try and find an example. Is there anybody that you can think of that gives you a visceral response, or is it more a personality type or a way of thinking when it comes to certain people? I can't really. I'm trying to think in my own mind, is there anybody out there that gives me, even if I disagree with that person, I don't really get that same emotional.
I think you've got to figure out what it is that's triggering you so much about that individual. It might be who they represent. It might bring up some, troubling past experiences. Something happened, something looked a little bit that way, or something that somebody said to you once and they've said it in a similar way. Sometimes it's subliminal. You can't put your finger on it and go, I don't know why, but I feel weird about that person. I don't feel right when they're around. It's how they make you feel as an individual. Either makes you feel a little bit kind of, I don't know, bit sordid inside, or a little bit kind of, just anxious. And you can't always think about the reason why, but it's possibly what they represent. But I think kind of going back to Trump, it's the type of guy that is going to, really polarize opinion. And it's quite difficult to find a middle ground on it, because there's such extremes one way and the other. So to be able to put yourself somewhere in the middle and say, look, I can see what he's doing on this side, and no, I don't agree with that. I can see on this side, and yes, I do agree with that. And it's not even as simple as that. It's because of, the people that you're living with. It's the family situation you're in, your social group, that you could potentially be ostracized if you were to show a leaning one way or the other. So say, for example, you're in a situation where you're in a group of friends who are pro-Trump and you're anti-Trump, then where does that kind of leave you in that group? They go, well, I thought I knew James, but actually he doesn't have that same opinion. The same with our spouses, our other halves. It can really start to impact on how they feel about you as your person, as your moral compass and your beliefs.
Yeah, very divisive. So John West says many people are angry about Trump. Anger is often a response to a violation of a sense of righteousness. A violation of a sense of righteousness.
Sense of righteousness.
trying
I
to
think maybe
break that
expand on
down.
that, John. Yeah, maybe a little
maybe
bit more.
expand on that. John also says 5 bullets, please. Is that bullet points from us, or is that
yeah,
or is that bullets for Trump? Because
we're very, very low intellect.
we're very low
simple,
intellect on this one, John. You have to expand on that one.
Simple explanations.
But yeah, families do. It becomes quite divisive in households. I can imagine in the US, but in terms of when it comes to certain policies, it's like in the UK, it's very hard to decipher what the systemic knock-on effects of each individual policy is, James. So people might think they're voting on a policy that is good for them, but they don't know how that impacts 100 other systems or policies in a dynamic system. So unless you're versed in how socioeconomics works and politics and the whole systemic view of things, you haven't got a clue. It's like doing plumbing in your house and you see water coming out of one pipe. You do something to that pipe, but you don't realize that's going to build up pressure somewhere down the line on the other side of the house. If you don't understand the plumbing, you're thinking you're helping something and you're going to blow something up somewhere else. So it's to become so viscerally affected by something you don't really understand. And I would say 99.99% of people don't really understand the systemic effects of what they're voting for.
That can cause anger as well, because I think if you don't understand, it's that then reflection on yourself. It's like, well, I should know this.
You feel
I should
shameful.
understand. I should. Exactly right. And that's when you can defend your position and say, look, this is, and I guess that's an element of why people do get upset, is because maybe they don't have the full story. They don't understand.
So John said it's a violation of our principles, ethics. The bullets were for you, a joke, so I could fire you. I think John's talking to James because we share the same name. It must be.
Must be. That's fine. I'll take that.
But then it becomes, when you don't really understand systems dynamics, which very few people do because it's complicated, you're then voting on potentially one-off policies here and there, and then it becomes a personality contest, doesn't it? And that's why Trump has done pretty well, because he has got that entertaining factor. He has got the gift of the gab. He's very different from older different politicians, isn't he? I never seen anything like it, really, the way he talks to people and the way he comes across. And he comes across as like he's talking to his friends in a bar. And we've said it before with politicians in the UK, they've got this hand movement that they all use when they talk like this, and you can see they've all been to the same communication school. They're like robots saying the same thing.
The
politician.
It's that kind of that. This is what I'm saying. I'm going to make the point. I'm going to be absolutely clear here that I'm saying nothing of any importance whatsoever. But if I say it with enough conviction,
if I do this, if you see this farm, you know it's a lie. Just this will be we're going to stop politicians doing this. It's a weird.
Yeah, maybe
it's annoying.
Maybe we're going protest in Parliament, mate. It's like ban the thumb.
We'll send a little thing around on the internet so it becomes like
that'll work.
A meme for a lie, the thumb. So
going back to your point, I mean, we've said this before on other lives, that he speaks the language of the populace. He speaks the language of the common man and woman, and he doesn't speak political speak. No. It's simple. There's a level of kind of rhetoric there that almost kind of is disarming. That because he doesn't use long, convoluted words, he uses very simple words, almost to the point of appearing illiterate and not particularly articulate. But don't underestimate the fact that he's very intelligent and knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, but those are marketing insights to do that, James. there's a level of reading capability that they say even in all marketing, whether it doesn't matter if it's a Financial Times or whatever it is, you should basically lower the level. So don't use big words. Lower. I can't remember what the ideal level is, but it is quite low and very plain English. So don't confuse things.
Don't speak like I speak.
No,
I use
do not
big
use
words
big
to feign
words.
intelligence.
Yeah, because no, the simplicity, like Einstein would say, if you can't explain it in simple terms, you don't know it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Just be able to talk in layman's terms to people, and that is what he is good at. But we'll go through some of his history, James, just to see, what this guy. I think he's got Scottish roots, doesn't he? I think he was born in 1946, June the 14th, 1946, in Queens, New York, to Fred and Mary Trump. Attended New York Military Academy. Studied at Fordham University, I think that is, before transferring to Wharton School of Business. Took over his father's real estate company, the Trump Organization, in 1971, expanding into Manhattan, and had a lot of major real estate development. So his dad was quite a big real estate mogul, wasn't he? So he was pretty loaded before that. So we've got Trump Tower, 1983, luxury skyscraper, Atlantic City casinos, expansion into golf courses, hotels, branding. It is quite weird with Trump because, if anybody's watched Back to the Future, it's Biff, isn't it?
It is Biff.
It's the whole thing.
First? Which came first?
I know, it's just, I don't know if it's modeled on the Trump thing, but I'm not saying it's exact personality, but the whole concept of it, isn't it? It just looks like this thing where there's mayhem outside and casinos and
a secret almanac from the future that he's been using just to go, this will work. This will work.
It's just uncanny how similar it is. And then you've got the political career. So we had, people like Obama. I don't know if you've seen those presidential talks where he ridiculed Trump about, he's never going to become president. Everyone was laughing at him. Trump's sitting there in front of everybody. They're taking the mickey out of him. And then what happens? You got to be careful what you say, haven't you? Man,
it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, he got them back. He came back, didn't he? Yeah, he really did come back. And like you've said before, he switched from Republican to whatever it is.
Democrat. So Democrat and then back to Republican. So it's been quoted again, sort of according to Wikipedia, that he's obviously thinks that there's good elements of being a Republican, good elements of being a Democrat. So he's kind of flip-flopped a bit from one to the other, but then settled on being a Republican. But and
what's your view on the guy, James? What do you think about this guy overall? When you think Trump? What do you think? What's comes to your mind? Do you have a visceral response to it?
I don't have a visceral response. I'm fascinated. I'm one of these people that go, so how has this all happened? How has it come about that he's been able to do this? And, I can't help but it's not a respect thing. It's an awareness that he's figured out the algorithm. He knows what to do, what he needs to do to get elected.
Yeah.
He knows what to say to get people to vote for him. And, he won't be browbeaten and he won't be talked over. He's unapologetically aggressive in debate. And, he'll say what the majority of people possibly are thinking, but he actually says it out loud. And so people are going, oh, God, I can't believe he said that. But then in their sort of quieter moments, they go, I was possibly thinking the same thing. So it's an interesting kind of I think he calls himself a sort of a semi-isolationist, that when you're looking to, polarize opinion or galvanize a nation against a common enemy. He's done that particularly well. And then when, again, you look back through history, all the very notable dictators or leaders have done that particularly well, that they're able to, given the right circumstances, kind of in that perfect storm, to mobilize an entire nation.
Who do you think is used on that point?
Right, he'll have used so many. I mean, Hitler, Stalin, even in the UK. I mean, I was just thinking, actually, I was thinking about, I was having a conversation, actually, with one of my clients this morning. We were talking about Oswald Mosley and the black shirts, and how he was there as a Hitler supporter, and thinking that he had great ideologies, and you could see how this was going to benefit Germany, and maybe the UK could have done with some of that as well. He was there, on the side of the people, albeit the Aryan Germans and the pure breeds and all that sort of thing. And he was getting on board with that. And then sort of Churchill's there as this kind of stoic leader that steps in to sort it all out. And he wasn't popular.
Churchill wasn't
by any
popular,
means. Made a lot of mistakes. But at the end of the day, he fought the Germans off, and we are a very different nation as a result. So I think, going back to your question, time will tell. History will write about Donald Trump in the way this turns out. When we're talking about the situation with Russia, the situation in Ukraine, that what happens from here on in, I'm just kind of observing with curiosity to see how this whole thing pans out. Because if he does bring peace, at what cost is that peace? What are the ramifications? When you're using that plumbing analogy, it's like, well, we've turned the mains off, and we've stopped the leak, but is it backing up somewhere else that then is going to cause an even bigger leak? So I think it's a great analogy that you use, but it's like time will write that story in relation to how this all pans out.
Yeah, but there is you don't really feel anything towards the guy. You're quite, neutral about it. I
mean, comments is, comments and the way that it's his.
Is that a skill, James? Because you can see things in context. You have to do you think it's a skill to take certain subjects in context? So you could, if we're talking about Trump and, let's say, sexual abuse, then you can say, look, I categorically think this is
I was
terrible.
Literally about to say the comments that he's made about women and the things that have come out.
One woman was paid out something like 83 million in an out of court settlement. God knows what. There's obviously been.
I'm in no way
other people. I'm not saying he's innocent or guilty, because I have no idea. But when you're a high profile guy, you are going to have accusations. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm not saying they're all right either, because you can definitely have both when there's millions of people that could potentially
I mean, you've got to take a stand. You've got to take a stand in some way, shape or form around the moral elements. And my stand is that those things, they to be true, then that's just no. That's that's an unequivocal.
But it's innocent till proven guilty, isn't it?
And it'll be spun. Anything can be spun in any way, shape or form. So if you're pro, if you're anti, you can spin any piece of evidence, a grain of truth. You can spin.
And it's hard to get convicted of things like, there's not many people that are convicted for things like rape, because you obviously got to be there. Even if it did happen and you don't get convicted, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's just that you have to have certain criteria to prove it without any reasonable doubt that it actually happened. So there can be,
there's got to be protection of both sides. The accused and the accuser have to be protected.
Yeah. So then it becomes like a very grey area, doesn't it? Because you don't really, it's not a concrete yes or
And
no.
that's
It's like
that's why you have to
mirrors
remain curious and open to looking at all the evidence.
yeah,
Yes, you've got to make a decision. Yes, you've got to have an opinion. And it's not about sitting on the fence and saying, oh, well, I'm just going to be kind of wishy-washy around this. It's like, let's just see. Let's sit back and sensibly assess what is going on. And, when you kind of talk about the ripple effect and people say, well, we're in the UK, this isn't going to affect us. Well, it will. It'll affect the markets, how people feel about it. If they're feeling uncertain, that'll impact the markets. It always does historically. So, if there can be a level of kind of like, well, let's see how this plays out. And yes, you've got to plan ahead. Yes, you've got to think of the future. But this could actually work out to be okay. There's always that option that this will be okay, as opposed to we're all doomed.
Now, what do you admire about the guy, James? What would you say is admirable?
I don't know that I admire him. I wouldn't say that there's any admiration.
There's no characteristics that you admire.
No, because I think there's. We were talking about this earlier.
I've got characteristics that I admire about Hitler, James. How can you not have one characteristic that you admire about?
Because
Trump, Hitler was a great orator.
Very differently. Huh?
He was a great orator, great. He could convey a
Trump
message.
Or Hitler?
Hitler.
Oh, yeah, mate, he could whip a
he was
crowd
a brilliant,
up like nobody else.
He was brilliant at talking. Like that's a characteristic, isn't it? You can't.
Yeah,
yes,
when you're
what he was
talking about
saying
admiration, I can appreciate. There's lots of things that I can appreciate. I wouldn't use the word admire. I'm going to be. I'd say around semantics.
What's the definition of admire?
I think there needs to be a level of. So for me to have admiration, I need to have an affinity or an emotion around that individual in a positive way.
Yeah, we'll have to look at what the definition of admire is. It might be the wrong word.
So that's the only reason I can appreciate and I can see how he's done what he's done, but my admiration is not for somebody like him or like Hitler.
It says regard with respect or warm approval. I admire. Okay, so that wouldn't be right. But the other one is look at something impressive with pleasure.
Yeah. Again, so I'm not getting any of those kind of emotions, but I do.
Impressive or attractive.
I have a level of kind of respect.
Maybe admires not
game.
Quite. Maybe admires the wrong.
So it was only semantics, mate. It was only semantics.
But you see what I'm saying? For me, with Trump, I would say what I like about him, he doesn't drink alcohol. I'm not saying people that drink alcohol are bad or it's bad to drink alcohol, but I like how disciplined he can be around something that obviously affects your mind potentially in a negative way if it's abused. I like the fact that he's 80 years old and he's very well dressed. And he gets up and he's active and he's out there doing stuff. I like that he can, he's a very good communicator, fantastic communicator. It's very dark humor, even with the stuff that I don't agree with. I think he's hilarious. I think he is very funny guy when he says stuff to his to journalists that I'm just. I think it's funny, but I've got quite a dark sense of humor.
You've got a weird sense of humor, mate, to be fair.
Yeah.
But it's,
but
like
a lot of people do though, James, don't they? Guys behind closed doors, if you really hear what guys' humor is behind closed doors, then they won't be the squeaky clean guys that you think they are.
No, 100%.
But
no,
again,
it's
these
fascinating.
are the type of things that I quite like. And he's what I don't like is I don't like casinos. I'm not really a gambling thing. I wouldn't want casino. A world that I envision is not, tacky hotels and casinos everywhere and strip clubs. I think that does sound like Biff Towers, whatever it's called in Back to the Future, wasn't it? It does feel like that type of cheap feeling. And then obviously some of the things that he says are, you're calling people dictators and then you're trying to get them in to have a conversation. I get it's all deal making and things like that, but it's crass, isn't it, James? It's a bit embarrassing.
I think the majority of people really, if they were being honest, they would want to see a strong, decisive leader that can make the tough decisions.
Yeah, that's what I respect, James. I like decision makers, probably because I'm more of a procrastinator, that I do like, and that's a skill that I'm looking to improve on. I think it's quite a masculine skill.
Yeah.
To be able to
make a decision. The attraction, mate. With all of these things, I think if you see something that's lacking in yourself, and when you're talking about admiration and respect and admiring, invariably comes from that, isn't it? That you're sort of thinking, well, I don't have those attributes, or you can convince yourself that you don't have those attributes. We all have those attributes, just as long as this thing up here can fathom it and recognize it and put those into practice. None of us are broken and we can't do this,
James, be able to hold simultaneous thoughts, opposing thoughts at the same time. So I can say Hitler was a monster, but he was great at public speaking without having an emotional, physical response to it. Obviously, if my whole family had been killed in the Holocaust, then you're going to have a visceral response.
That's going to be very, very different. But because you can sit back unemotionally, you can go, well, actually, cherry pick that. Exactly. He was able to mobilize an entire nation against a common enemy. The speeches that he made, the pageantry, the ceremony, etc., is all geared towards this thing. When you looked at old footage of thousands and thousands of soldiers, marching, and and same with the Soviet Union as well. That when you see it, you go, "Shit, that's impressive." So for one man to be able to mobilize an entire nation and have those people around him that would be loyal, and and again, if they were to be psychologically tested now, what would they come out as?
100%. John West says, you're likely thinking of F. Scott Fitzgerald's quote from the Crack Up 1936. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. John, you've hit it on the nail there. I didn't even know that existed, but that's exactly... See, I told you, James. I'm intelligent, and I don't even know.
You're better than you think. There you go.
Cheers for that, John. But it's true though, because people have online. I've seen since I've been posting. For one, there's some personalities out there. It doesn't matter what you say. You could say the sky is blue. They will argue against it. You could say it's a nice day, and they will take offense to it. And you're never gonna win them over. It's basically like their fear response is so heightened that they will look for anything to be offended by.
Yeah, it's like the kind of fight or flight, I guess, isn't it? You're either going to just freeze, and that sort of freeze response is, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear whatever it is you got to say. I'm not interested. It's too overwhelming.
Yeah.
And this emotion is just flowing out, and you can't hear anything. So it's very difficult to engage with somebody in that state.
And it's the feeling that somebody has ill intention. That's the default position. It's not the benefit of the doubt. And like you see the best in people, it's literally can be the opposite. It's basically you are trying to bring me down, basically.
I've been in a situation where, I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've listened to a lot of people who've written books on self-improvement and at the state that I was in, at the mental state that I was in, I got to a point of saturation and overload going, well, great, bully for you. Fantastic. I'm really glad that you found the source of happiness, and that's great. You know, lovely for you to have found that. I'm not in a great place. I can't hear this right now. You then get to a point where actually you can start to kind of come back, and then you can hear things in a completely different way. So, you know, depending on that state of mind that you're in at any given time, it's immaterial of what it is that you're saying is going to create this situation where you just can't hear it and you won't respond to it in a particular way.
I agree. John says, John's flying today. I love him, John. I don't know if we're connected because your picture doesn't come up on here, John. But he said, nowadays, when arguing online, I find that people are mostly arguing with voices in their heads and other things that they've read instead of what I have written. Honestly, I totally agree, John. Some of the stuff I have to reiterate what I've actually said because they've probably skim read a couple of lines and then built up this whole story in their head about what it's about. Or they'll go through a whole article and they'll find like one line which could be interpreted in a different way, and they'll forget the whole article and it will be focused on that specific thing. So that's like a microcosm of what it must be like to be someone like Trump or a politician. Could you imagine that on millions?
I know.
James?
Well, it's almost going back to the article, it's almost kind of taking that out of the equation. It's like, well, what is this guy trying to achieve by writing these articles? And if people think that you're only writing it for monetary gain, then that's going to get a reaction as well, isn't it? So when you read some of the comments that they're sort of saying, oh, it's inaccurate, it's this, it's that, and then they're questioning, your reason for actually putting this out into the ether for people to consume, that's another element that kind of plays into it as well. It's like, well, he's just doing it for personal gain, therefore I'm going to completely destroy it. I don't care what he's trying to say. I don't care what point he's trying to make. I think he's just doing it to try and make some money.
Even if you're quoting, in terms of when you're trying to think critically or you're trying to find a point or research something, you might find somebody like a credible source where you think it could be unbiased. Even then, there was a guy that I quoted. This guy's got like 40 honorary degrees. He's been researching for 80 years on a specific topic, wrote 150 books. But people think they know better. I don't know if they actually think they do, but they actually just believe that they know. No research. What can you say? I would have to say, look, I would have to go and, read and research it and come back to you. I'm not saying you're completely wrong. Yes, we should question things. Just because it's an academic, it doesn't mean it's actually right. But to say it's totally wrong, like when you're not in that field, I think is.
And I think it's valid if you've done your own research and you found something, because that's that's how new discoveries are made, that you go and you're inquisitive and you think, well, just that's because it's been that way for hundreds of years doesn't mean to say that is entirely correct. So you go away and you do your own research and you find out actually they'd missed an element of it, just a slight part of the that calculation was wrong, or they hadn't looked into it correctly, but because of the eminence of the person, that it was accepted. So Darwin, for example, he could have got a little bit of the evolution of species just slightly off, and then that would then completely revolutionize his theory. But
it's rarely the average Joe is doing that, though, is it? You're talking about people who are academics, and then everybody else is everyone else is a regurgitator. We're all
Yeah, it needs to be the
regurgitators.
way. Yeah, we are.
We're going by what information is out there. We haven't got a clue what's going on behind the scenes in boardrooms with Donald Trump and, you know, the Secret Service and
No.
all of these things that are happening with Russia and the Middle East. We know it's probably some type of natural resources fight and some strategic positioning between empires, but people are so certain about certain things. And I don't know if that's another ability to be able to be okay with uncertainty. I think that's another fear response to want to be so black and white.
Yeah.
And I think again, politics does that.
Yeah. And it's a generalization to say as human beings, we like certainty. We like tangibles. And to be able to say, okay, and it's how we make sense of the world generally, isn't it? I think that's how we're taught. It's how we know that fire is going to burn us, that, you know, food is going to sustain us, things that we're taught. And again, it comes down to those lessons that we learn from a very early age in terms of how we do make sense of the world. And those are passed down from generation to generation. And, you know, it's this fundamental thing. It's like, well, if that isn't my belief system, then I'm gonna kick against it. If that is something that I don't know to be true. And over a period of time of having done that thing, it's like putting your hand in the fire and going, oh yeah, that burnt me, so I probably won't do that again. So it's testing it and learning it by experience, isn't it? I think there's a lot of stuff that we take as read, and because it's there and because of the person that said that thing, you know, again, going back to respect or whatever, that you have an emotional response to that person one way or the other. So you can say something that's factual, but if you don't like that person, you might push back against it. But if somebody else,
but is that emotional immaturity, though,
affinity? It isn't in respect of it's learnt behavior to an extent, but I think all you can do, and again, it depends on where you are, how you're feeling generally about yourself, is to be able to have that bandwidth to go, I'm curious. I'm just interested in this. I'm going to hold back judgment at this moment in time, and I'm going to look at the facts, and then I'm going to make up my own mind. Yeah. Which on the surface, just me saying that is like, yeah, great, James, you know, yeah, that's utopia, mate. You can go into a situation and go, let's look at all the facts, let's do the research. A, I haven't got the time. B, I haven't got the inclination. C, you know, whatever else you want to throw into the mix. But I think if we've got any chance of having an open, sensible, adult conversation about anything, then there needs to be some kind of meeting of minds where you have an open and honest conversation where you might not agree with what somebody else is saying, but you take the time to find out why they've got that opinion, as opposed to just going, you're wrong, I'm right, fuck you.
I think I think it's partly a skill. I know it can be ingrained in your hard wiring to be, you know, viscerally reacting. I can't even say that word. Viscerally reacting to certain things. Yeah. But I think it is a skill set to be able to, you know, show high levels of emotional regulation when you're conversing with people and learning how to think critically, because some you can start to conflate arguments. One time you might be talking about, you know, the Trump sexual abuse cases, and then all of a sudden you're talking about some type of Trump immigration policy, and then you start, if you don't know how to argue like a lawyer type of thing, if you don't understand logical fallacies, then all of a sudden
the ability to debate, isn't it?
Yeah, then you're conflating all different arguments and you've got no chance of coming to any reasonable outcome. So maybe sometimes I think, you know, I'm the guy who wants all of this liberation and this freedom, and then I speak to some people and then I start to think, no, maybe the masses do need to be controlled, because it feels like some people can't think. So I'm from a poor background, and then I can understand why some of these probably intelligent people that have got money just think, I can't be asked with these people. I'm just going to dictate what they're going to do because they're getting on my nerves, basically. And I'm somebody who's from poor background, and I can understand that. So, conflating arguments, not being able, it's like in America, it's like with the Democrats, they always, like Biden, always go and try and get the black vote. And then all of the black vote was the Democrats. And it's a very high percentage of black people will vote Democrat, where maybe certain other demographics are more equal split. So some things can be like a group thing. So in terms of when people disagree with Trump or like what you said, then all of a sudden you can start to live in echo chambers, especially online. And then all you're getting back is feedback of people who think like you.
Like you do.
Yeah. So I like to follow people that I don't agree with because I'm interested in what they have to say.
Where does that come from in you? Do you understand where that it's not an ability as such, it's that character trait, what that emanates from, or where that emanates from?
I think it's because I've come from poverty, and then I've had friends that are rich. I've been in business. I've seen different demographics. I grew up predominantly with black people. Most of my friendship group was black. Single parent family, so then I was around women quite a lot all the time because there was no father figures in that area. So I've seen probably a lot of sides of the same coin from a lot of different people. And then going into personal training, and you're getting back-to-back feedback on a lot of different people, from people who work as a dinner lady in a school to people that have got, you've worked with billionaires, haven't you? I've worked with people that have flown me to Singapore. So you're getting to see a whole range of people back-to-back constantly for years, like 15 years, I would say, back-to-back, all different types of people. So you're getting to see how people think, how they work, how they treat their kids. What do they think about money?
How they talk about their partners,
politics, how they talk about their partners. You're getting a first-hand. I know it's anecdotal, but then it gets you to go and look at the research and think, is this just an anecdotal evidence thing, or is there something else there? Is there actual statistics to back up what I'm seeing in real life? And then you go and do the research, and then it's an inquiring to think, can we actually solve problems or arrive at a solution? And why, like you said at the beginning, James, why are things the way they are? And that having that curiosity without jumping in with an emotion. I hate this person. He said this. Oh my God, have you seen that policy? Terrible. Yeah, I know, but just take it into context. Look at the broader spectrum of the idea of what you're saying. Can you see more objectively than your own subjective experience? Because I know I'm thinking when I'm thinking something, I'm thinking through a subjective tunnel. I know I've got biases, so I'm already factoring them in. I know
you're making allowances for it.
Yeah, I'm questioning. What I like when I'm speaking to people and there's any type of debate, I want somebody who can argue themselves out of what they think, and then I'll be much more likely to believe in what you're saying. I would say come with a compelling argument to argue me out of how you think right now. And if you can argue very hard on both sides, I'm going to be somebody who's going to be more respectful of what you've got to say. If it's ultra biased and emotionally based, I'm going to question your decision making on that side.
And that's, I think, mate, that's what it comes down to, doesn't it?
Great convo. Windows updating, dropping to reboot. Windows, get a Mac.
Thanks for the update, John.
I love John West. He was flying today.
Yeah.
So I think this whole Trump debate, what we've come round in a circle to say,
it's like
James,
human nature,
it's the same. It's the same with Biden as well. We can say, look, he made bad decisions, but if we look at Biden's life in context, his wife and kid died in a car crash. That is horrific. And then you can understand why he's maybe one of the sons that was in that car crash. Hunter became like a drug addict and stuff like that. Of course, you can see how those type of things happen. Imagine the mental carnage that happens when something horrific like that, happens. And this guy's still, in his old age, is still there, showing up, become the president. Whatever I might not agree with his policies or the way he acts or the way he thinks, and sometimes
he made a stand.
I've got to respect. I've got to give him respect for that.
Yeah.
But I might disagree with everything he says. But as a human, even Hunter Biden, I might think, oh my God, this guy's gone to Ukraine and he's doing all this dodgy stuff. But you got to have an understanding of where somebody's come. You might not agree with. You don't have to agree, and you're not condoning bad behavior. That's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But you're taking. I think they call it that. There's that between what is it? The impulse and the something else. There's like a gap. And if you can widen that gap, what am I talking about, James? I've read this somewhere.
I know.
Stimulus and response. It's the gap between stimulus and response. If you can widen that.
All I was going to say was, how do you then take a step back, only for a moment? And what is it? And again, we talked about when you're in a situation of high tension, high energy, high emotion, your ability to be able to do that. If something's presented in front of you, then it's this different sort of reaction, this kind of visceral thing that will put you into fight or flight. But when it comes to something like this, you do have the ability to just go, well, let's just take a pause here, have a little think, and be a little bit kind of introverted to say, what's going on right now? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Why is this making me feel so anxious? And what am I worried about? I mean, again, the sort of conversations over the weekend is like people banding around, or politicians banding around the idea of subscription. What do they call it? For
the army.
For the army. Yeah.
I think it's subscription, isn't it? Or something like that.
Conscription.
Yeah, so they're doing it compulsory in Poland, aren't they? Apparently, that was the idea.
So you think you're a parent that your child potentially is going to be conscripted into the army, and you think, and this is what kind of made us fearful over the weekend. It's like, Jesus, because we haven't had that since. I mean, like national service was another one that you. Depending on who you're talking to, they've been through the national service. Depending on it's a bit like going to boarding school for me. Didn't have a great experience. You talk to somebody else, it was the best thing that could have happened to them.
Yeah.
So national service, for example, if you talk to somebody in their sort of 70s, they might say to you, yeah, that's what kids need these days. They need national service. It will sort them out. It'll give them discipline. It'll give them an awareness. It'll give them respect. And then somebody else who went through national service said, nearly killed me. I hated it. I hated every minute. And I think it's damaged me for life. So, depending on the sort of the narrative, is taking an entire perspective of saying, well, that's your lived experience. That was your interaction with that particular thing. But that doesn't mean that everybody is going to have that same response. You can't just kind of throw a blanket over it and say that's going to work. So all of these elements have to be looked at and say, well, actually, there's certain things there that could potentially, but let's take an overview.
Yeah.
But we want
You got to
certain.
take it in the context of the actual situation, haven't you? Like we said before, not conflating it with too many different arguments or themes. So if you're talking about conscription, stick with conscription and stick to the evidence and the context around that thing, rather than conflating it with a load of other policies and feelings around what you think might happen based on no real evidence.
But I think society is, the foundations of society is a reliance on people just blindly following and not asking questions. Otherwise, so the alternative is that we've got everybody that's kind of in sheep mode, and then you've got anarchy on the other side, and there's nothing in between. So you've got everybody that's compliant sort of drones that are just moving around, not asking questions, following the general consensus and not, bucking the status quo. And then you've got pure, unadulterated anarchy, where there's pillaging and looting and, everything has just gone to shit. So you've got this fear-based thing. It's like either we're compliant or we've got this other thing. And the two can't, coexist in some form in the middle, that actually we've got this thing where we're not going down that route where there's going to be all out, civil war, but we're not just there passively consuming and accepting.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? To be honest, it is. I think it's definitely about learning to think, improving what they would say, Hawkins, your consciousness, understanding yourself and your own personality and what your triggers are, understanding that your own point of view can be clouded by your own coping mechanisms to fear. So question yourself, try and argue both sides of an argument, and understand, maybe people say politicians lie all the time, but maybe look on the other side and think maybe people can't handle the truth. And that's why they bend the truth, because people can't handle it when you say things straight. Maybe Trump is saying things sometimes in a very direct and straight way, and people find it difficult to digest truth, because truth can be painful, James, when people say something that is, touches your nerve. And normally it might be touching a nerve because there's maybe a little bit of truth. It could be full truth in it. We can define what truth is, but it can be triggering. So understanding your triggers in any argument and just opening the gap between a stimulus and response, I would say, is probably the best thing you can do in even the word debate. I don't really like the word debate because you're already assuming you're right. And I think it's about arriving at a solution to a problem and understanding each other. When you're debating, it feels like it's more of I've got my point of view, you've got your point of view. Whereas more, if it's a discussion and you want to get to a solution, then you're sort of pitching your
debate does
side.
have that connotation. There's going to be a winner at the end. They've got these kind of debate competitions that somebody comes out voted as actually, yes, that person was more convincing, or that, the other person was. So, I think
because you can have very good personalities that are debaters, but they're actually wrong. And you can have an absolute mouse in the corner who can't communicate, and they're actually, what they're saying is very wise.
Yeah.
And maybe you should have listened to that person. But somebody who's good at debating will, they could argue the hind legs off a donkey, couldn't they?
Yeah.
To be honest.
And you can say anything. You can say anything with enough conviction and with enough emotion and force and authority that people would go, bloody hell, because they said it with such confidence and belief. That must be true.
It's an NLP thing, isn't it, James? The neuro-linguistic programming. It's like 70% of what you say is tone, and then it's something else, and then the last bit is basically what you say. What you say is like the smallest part.
experiment that Darren Brown did, you know, program a long time ago, that he was in a shop, went up to the lad behind the desk and handed him, said, that's £20. The guy put it in the till and gave him back his change. And like they came back sort of 10 minutes later and said, just have a look in the till for me. It was a blank bit of paper. But because, again, in that situation, that social situation, that who in their right mind would think they would get away with handing you a blank piece of paper and trying to convince you that was a £20 note? But because he said it with such conviction, he said, there's 20. The lad was, you know, either he was new, either you don't know the context of it, but like put that in the till, gave him back the change, didn't blink an eyelid.
Yeah, easily done.
Again,
that can be the same for anybody, isn't it?
It's conditioning, exactly the same.
Yeah. So if you know these things, the broader context of communication, how to think critically, logical fallacies, context, conflating arguments, if you've got an understanding of how to think, I think you understand broader context, then I believe that you actually feel differently. You think differently, you actually feel differently. And a problem with both sides a lot of the times, it is an emotional, reactive state.
Yeah, and I think there's an element of this thing, an awareness piece of once you know human nature and the psychology behind it, it's then seen as a way of manipulating and coercing. So there's a fear around that as well. It's like, you know, God, if you know too much, you'll then know how to manipulate the system and get somebody to come to your way of thinking. Well, there's thousands and thousands of books written about exactly that subject. You know, so to understand how people think, you know, it's sales terminology, tech, you know, that side of things is there.
Yeah. But there's a difference, James, isn't there, between arguing a point and actually like criticizing someone personally, like in a personal attack. So I've had it online where you're talking about a specific subject, and then it's like the sort of ad hominem, isn't it? The personal attacks start to come when they can't get you in terms of the argument. And I think for people, then have boundaries. Make sure that you have got boundaries of respect of how people talk to you. Otherwise, people will. As soon as that happens,
you've already lost. You've already lost the argument. As soon as you start to say things about somebody personally, it's like, you know, there's nowhere to go with this.
But if you're the other side of that, James, and someone's just violating you, you know, be aware of that. Don't allow people to violate you, because normally some people have got those strong opinions. They seem to attract impassivity because that's the only thing that, you know, people can survive around them, because otherwise they'll be questioned and conflict all the time. So I would say, you know, have boundaries around respect. You can have respectful debate, respectful conversation, but keep it as that, like a professional would do.
And go into it with a bit of excitement and curiosity. And
curiosity,
you could learn something new. You know, that we can't know everything. We can't have all the information. You know, we're not on here saying that we know
nothing.
Remotely what the hell we're talking about. It's just like we're just having that conversation.
That's a good place to end. That's the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know nothing. There's so much out there that you're unaware of. You just don't know what you don't know, and you're going to be learning all the time, and new information is going to be revealed. Whatever is a potential of fact today could be different in 100 years time. So
great
we'll leave it there, James. But Donald Trump,
done,
divisive figure, but maybe it's more about how to learn how to think. Okay,
Marmite.
We'll leave it there. Take care, James. See you on Wednesday. Bye bye.
Much love.